and welcome to another Perspectives chat for things that are on across my radar or ideas that come to me. And as always, I speak without a plan. Just yesterday, I was speaking with a good friend of mine who lives in the US, and we've known each other for 30 years. And he was talking about the difficulties of sending his young kids to school because of the education system, and was wondering why it's so bad. Now, I don't want this to be a discussion on education because this would be a very long discussion and very complex. We know that there are major issues with the educational system, or I should call it a programming conditional institution. The ex-teacher and educationalist John Taylor Gatto has written a lot about education. Specifically, he calls it education weapons of mass instruction. So it's as if the educational system, especially from a very young age, is like a weapon. And what does that weapon do? Well, I responded to my friend by saying it seems like what's happening through the educational system is that there's a stunted growth of a person's essence. And what I mean by that is that when we're very young, of course, our formative early years, we're developing our personality, because it's the personality which allows us to integrate and participate and navigate life. It's part of the human ego. And at some point we need, to a certain extent, the human ego. We should not be dominated by it, but we should not eradicate it totally either. It should be in balance. And our personality allows us to have this external navigational persona. But at the same time, that allows us to go through the survival years of life, and parallel to that, we are, or should be, developing our essence, our being. And hopefully in correct development, as we grow older and unfold, the personality should start to diminish as the essence comes more to the fore, and we can then manifest our lives through more of the essence, our being, and less through the personality, because the personality is a kind of conditioned program, and depending on where we are born, where we grow up, and the influences we have in our early years and as we go through life, that conditions and programs a personality. But one's being and essence is more of a individual permanence. So I said to my friend that it seems that this is being completely reversed, in the fact that in the formative years, the educational system latches onto and programs the personality, but completely cuts off development of one's being, one's essence. So we have a kind of stunted growth or arrested development. And then this continues throughout life, because once you start to fix that, it's more difficult to unfix it. So if you have a very stunted growth in one's essence, or basically the door's closed on it, and it's not given nutrient, it's not given the ability to unfold, then it's like having a naughty child locked away in a room. Although of course the essence is not a naughty child, but the analogy fits, is that it's shut away and it doesn't come out. And so through life, I think this develops even further, in that or the majority of life's stimulants and the programming that we get from the exterior physical world is all focused on the personality. It it kind of pleases the personality. It praises and lavishes things on the personality. So the personality grows. It gets used to living in a kind of commercial consumerist lifestyle generally, whereby it gets fed the things that it likes. or you can acquire and have access to the things you like. It feeds the personality, but doesn't give a chance. There's very little stimulus for the essence or one's being to develop, which is why there's a need for certain wisdom schools or teachings or paths that can try to get in there and change that around, where it deconditions the personality and allows the being, the essence, to develop. But that kind of thing is kind of shut down in our modern societies, and that goes all the way through our life. Even when we're older, we find that you have to really make an effort to seek for that nourishment, or to look for those tools or teachings that can develop one's being, one's essence, because they're shut out of life, and deliberately so, to create a more manageable, pacified people. And what I said to my friend is that these days we have to be careful, because the younger generation are being conditioned to be a jellyfish generation. That's not my term, by the way. It has been used by others, but I think it's appropriate that there's an attempt to create a passive, manageable, malleable younger generation that will be easier to manage as a mass, as a crowd. And this was a conversation I had just yesterday, and just this morning, by a happy coincidence, I was reading some work on Rudolph Steiner, who I've mentioned before, and I came across this phrase, which I thought was interesting. It's from 1916, so this is over a century ago, and it's from a series of lectures that he gave in Dornach, and the lecture series is called Things in Past and Present in the Spirit of Man. And this is lecture number 4, which was given on the 4th of April 1916. And if anyone wants to look it up, it comes under the category GA167. So you can just look online for Rudolph Steiner GA167. And this is at the end of the lecture, so I have to go and find it. It's one of the last few paragraphs, and I'll just read a short extract from it. And this is Steiner talking in 1916. Very shortly, when one will have written the year 2000, i.e. when we come to the year 2000, because we'll write it, the date. Very shortly, when one will have written the year 2000, there will come from America not a direct prohibition, but a kind of prohibition against all thinking, a sort of law which will have the aim of suppressing all individual thinking. On the other hand, there is the beginning achieved in this direction of suppressing all individual thinking into pure materialistic thinking, where one does not need to work upon the soul, in which the human being is handled as if he were a machine. So there's a few elements there. There's a prohibition against all thinking, the aim of suppressing all individual thinking, and after the year 2000, or beginning in the year 2000, well, now we know very well that in the last few years they've been developing this cancel culture, where people who speak out against the program consensus narrative, especially against certain developed liberal themes, are being cancelled by the culture. And now, there's certain cultural wokeisms or certain cultural memes that are censoring what people can speak about in general public. But you see, and the censorship comes from the people around them, because society's programmed them to say, "Oh, you can't say that. It's no longer suitable for these times. It's anti this or anti that." And so this individual thinking has been completely shut down. And the last 2 years especially, we've had a great amount of censorship, for online censorship. We know that the videos have been taken off because they dare to approach a different perspective, a different view. There's now this been misinformation and false facts being thrown around everywhere as very, superficial accusations. People's websites, people's social media has been taken down. The mainstream media has been attacking this individualistic thinking. So it's interesting that Steiner points at this over 100 years ago. He says, not a direct prohibition, but a kind of prohibition against all thinking. Not direct, as if it's not a law coming from the government so much as saying you can't say that, but they've created a cultural environment, a sphere of cultural self-censorship. So it's more indirect, but it's very effective. Then Steiner goes on to say, they would achieve in this direction of suppressing all individual thinking into pure materialistic thinking, where one does not need to work upon the soul. So there's this push towards materialistic thinking. We're thinking, now in purely digital terms, or in kind of machinic thinking, and so it's suppressing the soul. Exactly what I was speaking about to my friend. It suppresses the essence, the being, and develops a personality, which is the personality gets dragged into materialistic paradigms of thought, but the soul, the being, the essence is suppressed. And the final sentence says, in which the human being is handled as if he were a machine. And again, this is a theme that I've been looking at, and many people, is the human being in this day and age is being maneuvered into a path where we become automated like a machine, and we lose the ability to think, we lose the human soulful values, and we become a cog in the social soulless machine. So I think these are the issues of our time, and we have the responsibility as a human being to work upon manifesting the being part of us, and not the ego, personality, and the machinic side. That, of course, is a large theme, a large conversation, but for now, I thought I would just touch on that. What could I call this chat? I don't know. Essence versus personality, something like that. But anyway, so far, thanks for bearing with me and for listening. Cheers.